A little over a week ago, a spending package was pushed through the government in a hurry. While our president initially pledged that he would probably veto the bill, or at least possibly, he did wind up signing it, and the entire political world went into a turmoil. There were people that were calling in to Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity's show that I never thought I would hear say that they were not going to support the president anymore, who were calling in and saying that they were not going to support the president anymore. The whole thing came in a knee-jerk from the MAGA crowd that I still believe was premature. It's almost impossible to knee-jerk with this president. I gave it a lot of thought after the world didn't end from it, and I think I may have drawn some conclusions as to what's happening with this and where it's going. In the last year, our president has actually pushed through 60% of his advertised agenda from his campaign. And our Congress, which is legally tasked with providing a budget and a way to spend the money for the year, has not actually done so. They've passed a series of continuing resolutions to keep the government functional, but is still spending like crazy on anything and everything that they can spend on. They have no accountability at this point, and constitutionally that is against the law. With the government shutdown looming, our government threw together a spending package that was worth about $1.3 trillion. It's important to note that that's not actually a budget, because a budget would have accountability for it. It was just a bunch of congressmen throwing a little bit of this and a little bit of that in there and expecting everyone to read it and vote on it within 48 hours. Let me do some math on that before I go too far into that. 48 hours is 2,880 minutes, and from what I understand, the Congress didn't even have that long to read it and vote on it. At which point, they did push it through and pass it with dissent from some of the bigger names like Rand Paul, and they put it over on the president's desk. Now, the president initially knew what was going on with it and said that he may veto it, but after some thought, he did sign it and push it through. And I really think I understand why he did that. Usually it's the Congress, or at least the minority party, that's blamed for any sort of government shutdown. But in this case, the two houses of government and the two parties did come together and pass a continuing resolution, even though there was no accountability on it, and send it over to the president's desk. Even though government shutdowns are largely symbolic and meaningless at this point, everybody still gets their paycheck, and if they don't get their paycheck, they still get back pay. This would have been another piece of ammo for the mainstream media and press to use against our president, seeing as he would have been the last link in the chain that was stopping the budget. He would have been the one that caused the government shutdown. And I don't necessarily believe that it would have been political suicide for him, but it definitely would have been another thorn in the side for him going forward with centrists and maybe getting some carryovers from the left. I am not a very, very big 4D chess guy. I know there are a lot of people in the media that like to say mega underwater 4D chess. Trump is 25 steps ahead of everybody that he's working with. While I believe that he does know what he's doing and he's maybe a step or two ahead and he's got a strategy, I don't give him that much credit that he's sitting here playing this system as much as it's falling into his lap and he's taking advantage of what he gets. After the president signed the resolution, he did something that I've never seen any other president do. He called an impromptu press conference and got on the air and started reading the resolution so the American people knew where their money and their taxes were going to. I was listening to a couple of radio networks at a time, and a couple of shows, including one that I've never heard interrupt for the president speaking, put the president on and let him read this continuing resolution over the air. And I think that's an important part of why the resolution was signed. This struck me as really, really odd, but I gave it a lot more thought, and I started to realize that this budget was set to run out in 6 months. And in 7 months, we're going to be voting on 88% of our elected leaders and who we send to Washington across the country. I don't necessarily want to give too much credit if credit isn't due. I'm the kind of person that wants to question everything that an elected official does. But in reading the bill on the air, I started to wonder if this wasn't a step in the drain the swamp narrative. It took me a couple steps to figure out where I was going with this, but once those pieces fell into place, I started to realize that what I stumbled upon was either a huge accident or a giant act of genius. It's important to note that congressional voter rolls are public access information. Not a lot of people know where to go find them, and I'll provide a link in the description below so you can go and find who voted on this continuing resolution. But the fact of the matter is, Trump wanted to make sure that everybody in the country knew who voted for what and how they voted. With 7 months to go until the general election comes around, it's important to note that we are in the middle of primary season, and our Congress expected to just push a resolution through that nobody was going to read or hear about. And then our president got up and read it right on the air, right during primary season. Right now, our Congress is filled with Democrats and Republicans that refuse to work with our president, largely based on the fact that he is an outside candidate, and if he succeeds, that means that anybody can go up and run for any office as long as they can find funding for it. And that's especially dangerous for lifelong politicians in the age of crowdfunding. I had largely hoped that by this point in our election cycle, there would be primary ads left and right, but I have unfortunately not heard very many. But I'm starting to wonder if any of that's going to change. Even here in good old District 1, Wisconsin, where Paul Ryan is king, I think that a Republican challenger is going to come up and rise up and probably take his seat. I think it's a good possibility that we have a race between a Democrat and a new-faced Republican. As I was listening to Sean Hannity's show on Friday, one of his callers called in and said that he was going to boycott the 2018 election and urged the rest of America to do the same. Sean was able to talk him off the ledge on it because in Sean's mind, the most important thing in the world is that Republicans maintain the majority in everything and everywhere. But that was a clear message that the American voting public is mad at the elected officials that they have in, even if they are Republicans. And it is time for something to change. Once again, this could have been just a giant happy accident, or it could have very, very easily been strategized by our president. But either way, it put a ball in motion with an upcoming election and a chance to change the government. And I think that's going to be a good thing going forward. Maybe it's going to put some turmoil in, but turmoil makes the headlines. Do you think that this was a strategy or just some sort of happy accident? And do you want to see the voter rolls and see if your congressman was one of the people that voted yes for the Omnibus Package? I welcome discussion in the comment section below, and especially over on Twitter. That is at Ed's Blog Twitter with a 1 in place of the I. Remember, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, and journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusion. Take care, everyone.